when you moved. Okay, all right, so I think we got it all figured out, and hopefully you'll be able to see my face soon. I am thankful that you guys are here, like not here, but watching wherever you are, and it's going to be a fast and furious 50 minutes, but we're going to get there. A lot of this will be toggling back and forth between the slides, so if you are having trouble, you're like, I can't exactly see what's on her slideshow, you have access to it in the agenda, but we'll be toggling back and forth between my face and this. Yeah. There's also going to be some times where we turn and talk. And I can't judge the room on where you are if you're turning and actually talking to each other, but you're only going to get out what you put in. So if you are willing, when I ask you to turn and talk, even if you're watching by yourself, like stop and jot. Like it's your time to be reflective of what's going on and how this is working. Okay, so let's get started with conferring levels A through K. I know we've got probably mostly K2 teachers, but there's probably some 3-5 and there's probably some 6-7 teachers because we all have kids that are reading at some level between A and K. So let's go back really fast to make sure we're on the same page about what I mean by conferring and one-on-one. There's two different types of conferring work. You've got your research aside complement teach, which is typically 4 to 6 minutes. You do the research during the conference. You're sitting down next to the kid and you're trying to figure out what do they need, and I'm going to coach them as I'm figuring it out. That's an art. Then we have the coaching conference. This is where the research is done ahead of time. Now I know what this kid needs and I'm ready to come conference with them and do some coaching. That's more likely what should be or is happening in your classrooms. You've done the research. Now I know this kid needs X, Y, Z, and now I need to go coach. So either way, you have to do research. So we're going to spend some of our time where our conferences should be, where we understand that they should be built on each other, that it's like leaving a little trail, and it doesn't have to be new learning every time. I think sometimes we think, I've got to come up with this like big, great, grand scheme of something to show them the next time, and it shouldn't be. There will be times where there is new learning, but a lot of times it'll be, I've talked about this, so remember when we did, and now we're going to do. And it should, when you're keeping records, and we'll talk about this at the very end, but when you are keeping records, they should be for what you need to know about that student, not necessarily the same all year long or the same for every kid, because what you're looking for and how you're conferencing with that kid could change how you record keep. So it's just something to kind of keep in mind as we go. So like I said before, all of these have research. So before we can even start researching, you have to know what you're going to look for. Maybe that's stamina, volume, engagement. And we're going to go into each of these a little bit. I'm going to spend the most time with the reading behaviors, but we will talk about each of these as we go through today. Your identity as a reader. You could be thinking, I need to look at my kids' Post-its. What are they stopping and jotting or not stopping and jotting about? I need to think about my goals as a reader. Are my kids setting goals? Have I set goals for my kids? Are they doing that work? And then reading behaviors. That's like your writing records, your miscues, and other pieces like that. So let's get into it. If I want to reach search stamina, I could do a lot of things. So kind of what I did for these next few slides is I kind of did like a mini if-then. If I want to look at stamina, volume, engagement, then these are the kind of things I would research. And we aren't going to get in depth just because of time into each one of these, but it'll give you a little glimpse. So like if I want to research stamina, volume, and engagement, I need to look at what my kids are doing during that independent reading time. How long are they staying on task before they start staring at the sky? Or are they opening a book but they're not doing any of the reading? They're just on the same page the whole time. Are they laughing at funny parts? Are they reacting to the book? That's part of engagement. Stamina. Are they able to stay on track? And then volume. They have 10 to 12 books in their book baggie, but it seems like they're only reading the same 2 or 3. All of those things give you a quick lens into what they are doing. Okay? So once I've done that research, you can do some coaching. And we'll do some of that coaching in a little bit. So then now I'll start next if-then. If I'm looking at them as an identity of a reader, Then I need to research things like, what does this kid really like to do? Like, what types of books does this student ask for, shop for, read consistently? When I ask the student how they feel about reading, how do they respond? Are they like, oh, I love reading time? Or are they like, ugh, not this again, right? So all of that lets you know how they feel about themselves and their identity as a reader. Probably that research, that work will be done at the beginning of the year because you're trying to get to know your kids and where they are. But it could be helpful to do some of that research and do some coaching for some kids that you feel like are low in stamina and volume engagement. I probably would want to research also their identity as a reader. How do they view themselves before I go coach? Then I could, if I'm thinking about Post-its, even in K1, they do some Post-it work. Maybe not the actual writing on the Post-its, but they're at least tagging pages. And they begin that work there. And then when they're in 3 through 7, we're asking them to do some writing about reading, which Kim Bowerman at the end of today, or the end of the 3rd session, is going to be talking about writing about reading. But for right now, let's think about. I've asked my kids to Post-it pages, to stop and jot, so-and-so, but I can research what they are doing in their reading, their thinking work they're doing, by looking at what they're posting or not posting. Or we're copying word for word. All of those can be things I can coach them on. You can coach about Post-its. It's okay. Then we have your goals as a reader. So either you've set goals for your kids, they are setting goals, you've set goals together for small groups or reading groups, and then you have to think, okay, have I given them the parameters of what that looks like to be successful in that goal? Like, do they know how to get there? And do I have evidence? Or if I've said, go set a goal for yourself today, are they actually doing that? You can just really quickly, maybe it's a reading journal, maybe it's a notebook. I've seen it where it's like a manila folder, and on the inside, they have a place for a Post-it for goals. And it could be like Fluency. And it could say something as easy as, before I read, I preview the book. While I'm reading, I scoop up my words. After I'm reading, I pick my favorite part and read to my partner during partner time. That could be a goal for Fluency for that kid. And it could just be as simple as it's on the Post-it note. But when I'm doing my research to figure out if that's something I need to conference about, Fluency again, I can look, okay, I set that goal for you. Are you doing that work? Or maybe you're not. Okay, so that's part of the if-then piece. This last part is, if I am looking at reading behaviors, okay, that means I'm looking at strategies from anchor charts, I'm looking at writing records, I'm looking at their fluency, their ability to read fluently, okay? So those strategies could be like, I've taught this whole 1st grade unit, and we've done this piece about word work, but they're not using any of those strategies to decode text. Probably something you're going, yeah, I got kids that do that. So I need to do some more investigating, some research to figure out what they are using or not using, and then I'm going to coach. Or running records. We do formal and informal running records throughout the year. Are we doing the analysis to figure out the miscues they're making and how I can coach them during a coaching conference? And we're going to work on that today. And then fluency. I know they're reading, like there's lessons in 1st grade that talks about don't read like a robot, right? And we've done that work with kids. Oh, you scoop up your words, scoop up your phrases. But when they're not doing it, how do I coach them? And so we're going to get into that. So we're going to spend most of the rest of our time today talking about the reading behaviors. Yes, the other pieces are important, but some of that coaching work comes naturally because they're not jotting. So my coach is, here's how you jot. Or they're not getting their goal. Let's coach about your goal again and work through how you're going to get there. There's more natural connections to this is what I see they're not doing, so we're going to coach them how to do it. This is more like I have to do some analysis and figure out what really do they need help with and how do I use that to my advantage. So if I'm going to look at fluency, let me stop here for just a second. Before we get into this next part, I have the chat going on my screen up here. So if you have questions as we get through, I know a lot of people said, oh, I'm here, I'm good. I know I'm actually talking to somebody. But if you have questions about what I'm talking about, I know I'm going fast, but it's because we have like 30 minutes left, and then I've got to be done. So if you have questions, let me know, and I'm going to just glance at my chat every now and then, and that'll let me know, oh, I need to answer that, and I'll tuck it in as I can, okay? So let's get through this next part, and then we'll have a turn and talk time to kind of debrief everything I've thrown at you in the last 15 minutes. So let's focus on fluency. Let's say I'm going to research fluency. I listen to them read, and then I have to have some kind of checklist or student-friendly rubric of what does a fluent reader sound like, look like, do. And then I can coach them to do that work. So this is an example, and you can probably see it if you have the slideshow pulled up better, of just a quick student-friendly rubric checklist on the run fluency assessment. I can listen to this kid read and decide I might want to focus on phrasing. Are they reading word by word, 2 words at a time, maybe 2 or 3 words, but it's not where the natural break would happen, or are they reading kind of fluently? Same thing, I could look at pacing. They're reading too fast, they're reading too slow, we're reading at a normal speaking voice pace. And then expression. It's flat, wah wah. It's mixed. There's some parts where they use exclamation marks or question marks and intonation, but then there's other parts where it's like, eh. Or are they matching what the text says? When there's an excited part, they're reading excitedly. If there's a sad part, they kind of have a sad. Are they changing voices with characters, so on and so forth. So I can have this kid's name on it. I can put the date. I could even put a row of dates. I could circle for the first time I met with them in one color, the next time I met with them a different color, so they can see their growth and progress over that unit, over that week, however many times you're going to meet with them. But having something like this gives me the opportunity to see where are they. So for instance, if I had a kid and they have their little skateboarding book, right, and they're reading, and they get into this, and I see that they're going, wow, look at the kids skateboarding, said Roberto. They are good. If I have this, I instantly can say, okay, well, we need to work on the expression and intonation for sure. But I probably could also say, we're doing some scooping, but we could do it some better. So I could decide I want to give them 2 different things to work on. I could decide I just want to look at that one piece. And so my coaching might look like, wow, I really noticed that you were scooping up your words, but I think we could do it by scooping up more. So I have a strategy called C3, say 3. Or in this case for lower kids, it could be C2, say 2. Or for upper kids, it could be I see 4, I'm going to say 4. Okay, and so I could look at my line and I model perfectly, just like this. I'm looking at this line. I'm going to do C3, say 3, C2, say 2. Let's see how that sounds. Maybe they will let us, let's try it a different way. Let me say 2, or C2, say 2, C3, say 3, and see if that looks better. And so then I would read it that way. The coach is really fast. I know, I've heard them. They need help on scooping up more phrases or more words, and then reading with emotion. So then when I practice, I model doing that work for them in their book. Or I could have a demo text that's their level or a level slightly above and do that work there. However you want to do that. And some of you are going, demo text, what is she talking about? We'll talk about that later. So based on what I heard, now I want to coach. I demonstrate that fluency, just like I showed you really fast. I name the teaching point. Today I want to teach you that we have to pay attention to how we read. There was an exclamation point. We read it like, wow. What does exclamation point mean? Oh, we're going to read with expression, excited. So I'm going to go, wow. Okay, I've named the teaching point, I demonstrated, and then we could even do some guided practice in that little coach time and say, okay, I'm going to do this line, you do the next line. Or I'm going to do this page, you do the next page. Okay, so it doesn't have to be a really thought out, planned, this is exactly what I'm going to say for this kid. It can be an on the run. I notice they're not doing that. We are fluent readers. We know how to read fluently, but now I just have to make that teaching visible to my kids. Open up the book and let's do it. That C3, say 3, or C2, say 3, like, you don't, or say to, it doesn't have to be something clever like that, because I probably would say it wrong every time anyway. But it's just a way to give them like a strategy to do that work. Okay, so that fluency rubric is a picture I took from somebody's notebook. So I don't have a paper copy of it. I wish I did. So the closest thing we have is what's in the slideshow. I know somebody asked about if they could get a copy. I don't have a copy. I just have a picture of a copy. So, but that is a way that leave them something. You could have that and make a really quick, easy one where it's a bookmark. And you circle on the bookmark. This is what I want you to work on today. You could have a post-it version of that. If you're really like cute drawings and you're good at that kind of stuff, like draw a little like happy face and say, read with expression. It doesn't have to be a fancy schmancy thing. It can be really fast, simple, just something to leave with them to go, okay, that's what I'm working on today. And that goes back to, I've set that goal in fluency for that kid. Now I'm going to check up and see how they're doing. This is a good transition to that. Okay, so take like 2 minutes and just, I threw a lot of information at you. Turn and talk to somebody around you, or if you're in your team, talk to your team. If you're by yourself, like do some reflecting. And we'll come back in 2 minutes. I'm going to be here, so if you have questions, ask on the chat, and I'll read through them so that I can answer them when we come back. I'm going to mute myself so I don't sound like fool for the next 2 minutes. But just take like 2 minutes, turn and talk about everything you've heard so far. Is this helping you make sense of conferring work? Okay? All right, go. Take like 10 more seconds, finish up your thought or thoughts that you're having with your people around you, and we'll go ahead and move on to the next part. Make sure I saw that. Okay. All right, so we'll go ahead and get back to what we're doing. I hope that was some good conversation. That was a lot of information. I know it was. But we have such a short amount of time together, so we're just going to truck on through. Somebody else asked about an electronic copy of the fluency rubric. I only have a picture. We can try to make one. I can try to make one. It probably won't be that cute because, let's just face it, it's me. So we'll just work on it and go on through. Again, if you have any other questions, let me know, and we'll go from there. So let's go on to the next part and thinking about anchor charts. I'm sure all of you are going, I have more anchor charts than I know what to do with. I don't have enough wall space. I don't have enough of this or that with all these anchor charts. There's so many anchor charts. There's so many strategies. How do I keep track of kids who are using or not using them? How do I know if they're effective or not? So let's just do a little, like, how can I use these to my benefit other than I have this anchor chart. I've unveiled it to my kids as we've done this unit, and now it's on my wall. And now it's on my wall. Like, we can use them. So I can do my research and think, what strategies is this student using or not using? Making mini anchor charts, like printing them off the Heinemann website where they're just like on a half page or a 1 page, is a great way to keep track of kids who are using and what they're using or not. You could even, if you wanted to, make a class set of a mini anchor chart, especially ones that you know they're going to use. With level A through K, it's probably mostly going to be the word work ones. I know kindergarten has word work ones. First grade has at least 3 different anchor charts throughout the year of word work. Second grade has some word work. So you could just, even if you wanted to just start the focus on those for your conferring, you could make a class set that's like a half page, laminate them, and have them in their kids' book baggies as you go through the units. It could be something that maybe you don't want a class set, maybe I just want like 10 of each, so on and so forth. But if they're laminated, then you can use your dry erase marker and you can circle or have the kids circle the ones they're going to work on that day, helping that setting the goal as a reader, setting some purpose as they go on. So you can do something like that. But here's what you want to ask. What strategies are you thinking of using first? So if I'm doing that research on the fly, I'm going to sit down next to that kid, I'm going to say, oh wow, we've been looking at all these good habits to solve hard words. Which one are you going to try to use today? And if the kid looks at you and they're like, I don't know, that's the perfect opportunity to say, how about, and there's your coach, you work on this one today, I'm going to come back and check on you. And then when you come back and check, you can do things like, show me where you did that work today. And they might go, I didn't do that work today. Okay, you've got your coach. Now you're ready to say, let me show you what that looks like. You open the book and you say, we're going to read all the parts of the word. Let's see if we can find a word in here that has lots of parts and see if we can figure it out together. So using that anchor chart to your advantage, besides it sticking on the wall and it looks nice or it takes up a bunch of space, making those mini copies, one, then when that unit's over, you could take that anchor chart off because they have it with them. Or two, it's a way to keep them accountable and give them purpose while they're reading. Okay, so let's say we've done that research and we figured out that Cosimo, who's my little first grader, and reading level D, we're pushing on him to level E, so he still needs some decoding work. Okay, I've given him a little anchor chart, and now I'm ready to prompt and coach. I've come to him and I've said, remember when we learned that we could read all the parts of the word? Let's try that together. Or I could say, when I listened to you read yesterday, I saw that you tried to read all the parts of the word. Can we try on this page? So your prompting and coaching isn't anything like way out there in left field. You're using what you already have, the kids already have, you've already introduced the skill, and you're seeing can they apply it. You could also turn this into like a repertoire conference where I know I've taught all of these skills in this anchor chart. All I'm going to do is say, as I'm reading with you today, we're going to point out, make it obvious, visible they're learning, which ones I'm seeing you doing. Or you're going to say, I did this one. I just used that to solve that word. Okay? And it lets you know, are they using the same strategy over and over again and not relying on any of the other decoding work you've done, or are they focusing on multiple? Because as fluent readers, as good readers, our good habits are we use more than one strategy to do the word work. We don't just use one, I promise. So let's pretend this is my mini anchor chart. We've done good habits for solving hard words. Checking the picture, looking at all the parts of the word, trying it 2 ways, okay? So I've got little Cosimo here, and he's got his level D book. And on his level D book, we open it up, and I'm like, okay, here's our page. I noticed that you wanted to work on looking at all the parts of the word. Let's look at this page and see if we can do that work here, okay? So they start reading, and they get to a word, kids, K-I-D-S, kids. And they say kid. What are you ready to prompt for them? I can say, remember when we learned that we looked at all the parts and some of those words were kind of hidden because they had these word endings like S and ED and ING, and the kid's going to go, oh yeah, hopefully, like, then I'm going to say, I see an S on the end of that word. Can that just be kid? Oh, it's going to be kids. And then they keep reading. It doesn't have to be a stop and like magical, big old teaching point, dog and pony show for every time I need to coach them. I'm coaching them to keep reading. I'm coaching them to use what they know in the book they're reading. Okay? And we're going to look at how to tie this better and with our miscues in just a minute. So, thinking about using our anchor charts in a more strategic way, turn and talk, I'm going to give you like a minute 30. It's going to be fast. Okay? On how can I use my anchor charts. You have your anchor charts. How can I use them to be more effective for my coaching work with my readers? Okay? Take like a minute. Turn and talk for real. Wrap up that conversation. I know you're all, your wheels are spinning and going, oh, I could totally do this with that anchor chart, or I never thought about shrinking it down and putting it in their notebooks, or I like the idea of laminating so I can keep tally, or I can circle what they are going to work on. I think those anchor charts, and in the past we've made them, put them up, and then we refer to them, but the kids aren't really using them. And so by making it their level, something that they can pull from, it allows them to do that work. Okay. Ready to talk about running records? I'm sure you are. Okay. So when we're thinking about running records, if I take an on-the-fly running record, or if I take a formal running record, I have to do the analysis part, or else I'm just listening to them read. A running record can be your most valuable tool for figuring out what to coach them on, what they really need as a reader when it comes to decoding or meaning or structure of English. If I don't get any of that if I never analyze it. Okay, and I know you're going, but when do I have the time to do that work? I will tell you, if you do the work, it pays off in your conferring, because I have a plan of what this kid needs. And I'm not doing running records all the time. I'm doing them, really I should be doing them on the fly running records when I feel like they're ready to go to the next level, and I want to do some to see, confirming that they're ready to go to the next level, or they've been in a level for a long time and I need to see like what's going on, like why are they not moving. Those are two really good reasons for our A through K readers to do running records. Your higher level readers, you are going to do running records less often because they're in those book levels, an SRT, all that junk. Well, not junk. They're there for a lot longer because those books are a lot more complex. But your level A through K, you're doing running records probably pretty often because they should be moving fairly fast. By fast, I mean like they're probably in a level for 30 or 40 books, which if you're doing 10 to 12 books a week, that's about a month, give or take. Not perfection, not like the rule, but in general, they should be in a level or band-ish for about a month. Okay? So when I'm doing that analysis, and I'm going to use it for conferring, I have to think about how do they word solve? Or do they word solve? That could be a problem. looking for patterns, and I want to find 2 to 3 goals for that kid. There's probably, especially in those lower levels, way more than 3 things you can coach that kid on. But if I try to coach that kid on all of them, they're not going to get good at any of it. So I want to pick my 2 or 3 that are probably dealing with word solving, and those are the goals I'm going to work on. Okay? And that's what I'm going to coach and work on with that kid on. So let's go back and make sure we're understanding analysis. I know some of the running record world is new or newer for some of you. Back in September, I did a 3-week webinar on running records. Week 1 was about how to do a running record. Week 2 was the analysis. And week 3 was putting it all together. I linked that webinar in this slideshow. So if you're like, this is way over my head, I don't understand the running record world yet, go back and watch some of those, and I think that will help you. If you're like, I know about running records, that's why I'm moving so fast, because I have to. I only got like 10 minutes. So here we go. Meaning, syntax, visual. These are your cueing systems. Meaning, did the meaning impact? So like, here's my story, here's my sentence. I like my horse, but the kid said I like my pony. The meaning, they're still using meaning because they probably looked at the picture, probably looked like a horse, and it makes sense in the sentence. I like my pony, okay? We can say that. So they're using syntax. We can say that in English. They substituted a noun for a noun, an animal for an animal. The visual is the graphophonemic information. What does the word look like, and did they draw upon what they know about letter-sound relationship to solve that word? Okay? I like my pony, I like my horse. Pony and horse only share 1 letter. 2, no, 1. Okay? They only share the S. Oh, sorry. They only share the O. Promise, I'm here. And it's not even the same beginning sounds. It's really not even the same O sound. It's not the same ending sounds. They're not using visual. So this kid, when they read, they used meaning, they used syntax, but they're not using visual. Okay? So I have Cosimo. He's my 1st grader. He's a level D. I've done a running record at the end of this 1st quarter. So we're going back to like October-ish for a level E, because I wanted to see, is he ready to move on? This is the work he's doing. I'm giving you some background knowledge on this kid because we don't really know this kid, but now you do. Okay? This is the work his teacher just finished teaching him how to do. Okay? We have his running record. It's linked in the slideshow, okay? So you can look at it. And I'm not going to take 5 minutes to analyze it, for you to analyze it, then us talk, because we don't have 5 minutes. But in real life, I would say, analyze this and we'll talk about it. But we're just going to talk about it. So you can click on that, but I've got it on the next couple slides as well. Okay? So we're going to look. As we look, we're looking for cueing systems, we're looking for patterns, and we're looking for what coaching tips could I come up with. Okay? So here's this first page. They've been given the intro about a traffic jam. Okay? There are people and cars and trucks trying to drive on this road, but something stops them and they can't go. All the cars and trucks have to stop, even though there's not a red light. Read to find out what they do in this traffic jam. So they've got some background knowledge. Now we're saying go read. This is what this kid did. The track driver, but they self-corrected, truck driver, looked down the rod instead of road. So on my miscue analysis, I have what they said, what the word was, and beside it, I'm saying what they used. This is a strength-based model. I need to find what they're doing consistently. They use visual, and for me, I like to put in parentheses BME for beginning, middle, and end for what they use. In this case, they use beginning and end, but they're not using the middle. Okay? They didn't see that OA as something else other than O. Then he saw a long ant of cars. Okay, so we're using a whole lot of nothing because eventually the teacher just had to say it's line. The kid's not using anything. They didn't even try. Then at the very end, they said asked instead of asked. But I can't go so. I can't go so makes sense, okay? And I'm using the beginning S sound, but I'm not using the rest of my visual. Okay? Let's look at this next page. I can't go this instead of said. Again, we're using meaning and syntax, but we're not using visual. Yes, there's an S in both, but it's not even in the same like place in the word, so I wouldn't give it to them. And later down they say, I saw a march instead of mother. Okay? We're using beginning sounds, not meaning in syntax, doesn't make sense. And then we have ducks for ducklings, and we are using meaning, syntax, and visual, but again, our visual is only the beginning and middle. Are you starting to see a picture of what this kid needs? Are you starting to see some patterns? On the very last page, they made 4 errors. What does that tell you about this kid's stamina? Just something to think about. Okay, so they said smelled for smiled. We're using our meaning, syntax, visual, but our visual, we're only using beginning and ending. Motor for mother. Again, meaning, syntax, visual, it could make sense in the sentence, but we're not using our middle sounds. Here versus her. We're using some visual. It didn't make sense in the sentence. But we're only using beginning, middle. Ducks for ducklings. Again, same thing. In this case, I would have said syntax and visual, but when I'm doing my analysis, I can only go back to as far as they read. So what they said in that sentence was, he smelled as he drove by the motor and heard ducks, and hear ducks. Hear ducks doesn't make sense. We wouldn't say that in English. Even though the rest of the sentence is already messed up, if he would have said her ducks, I would have given a meaning syntax. But because it's hear ducks, in that sentence context, doesn't make sense. But he's using visual. Okay, so quickly, I've given you the rundown of this kid, of this running record. What I want you to do, I'm not going to go to the next slide. Take 30 seconds, like 30 seconds, and decide what patterns, what coaching tips, what did you notice about this kid? 30 seconds. Back to me. I'm sure you all were talking so much, but maybe you were. Okay, so let's figure out Cosimo. I gave you some hints in there. Here, this is thinking about the anchor chart, thinking about where he is. These are the patterns I noticed. He uses visual, but he's only using beginning sounds consistently. Sometimes he used the middle sounds, sometimes he looked at the end, but most of the time he was only looking at the beginning. Then he makes errors, but he's not checking consistently for meaning and syntax. He did self-correct sometimes, but the kid made 13 errors and only self-corrected 3 times. So his self-correction rate's not great. He's not consistent. So those are 2 things I notice as patterns. So now let's kind of put this together. I've done this analysis work, okay? I know this is what he's learned before. Now let's thinking about prompts I can use to coach him. And how could I use this anchor chart to coach him? So let's think about prompts. If I'm coaching while they're reading, or I'm preparing to coach, I have to anticipate the patterns that I've seen in the running records and anticipate the coaching prompts. So I know they're using visual most of the time, but we're not using meaning and syntax all the time. So my coaching prompts are probably going to be a mixture of this, but when I look at visual, I want to use things like check it, because they don't need a ton of scaffolding there. They just need somebody to say, pay attention, look at all the parts, okay? And that could even be your prompt. Look at all the letters. I may not be saying, what sounds do all those letters make all the time. I may use that sometimes. But with syntax and meaning, when they make an error, and I'm doing this on the fly, if I'm doing a formal running record, I have to see what they can do by themselves. But if it's an informal on the record, or I'm ready to coach, I know what they need help with, they're probably going to make similar errors in that time when they're reading. I'm ready to coach. I have to know that if it's a meaning that they're not paying attention to, I'm going to ask things like, check the picture. Does it make sense? What would help you make more sense of this? If I know this kid's not using syntax to check every time, do we say blank when we talk is a great prompt? Does that sound right? Here, ducks, in that sentence, didn't sound right. So when I'm coaching this kid, I've done the running record, I know these patterns, I have to be ready with the kinds of prompts I need to pull from. If I only ever prompted visual, I'm not helping this kid to the full potential I could, because he's using visual. He's just not using all the visual. But this kid's not using meaning and syntax to self-correct enough. So I, for this particular kid, could prompt in any of these areas. But I think our tendency is we want to prompt visual, 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 and we forget about meaning and syntax. Just my own personal, okay? But let's go back to this anchor chart. Thinking about what we know about Cosimo, how could I use this anchor chart to also do some coaching? I could do a whole little coaching cycle, coaching conference with looking at all the parts of the word, because a lot of times he was looking at beginning sounds and wasn't looking at the rest. I could do one about doing a slow check and making sure we look at a whole word. I could, even with meaning and syntax, talk about say it the best you can and let's think about what it means. When he made that error, ant for line, he was using nothing. But he needed that prompt, and now I know that when he gets really stuck on a word, he just makes up something. I can say it the best we can, and let's see if it makes sense. So I have lots of things I could have decided to pull from this kid, from his anchor chart, or based on what I know about meaning, syntax, and visual prompting cues, to now coach this kid when I meet with them next. I know that this kid isn't looking at all the parts of the word. He's not reading the whole word. And sometimes he's not using meaning and syntax to check it. Okay? Just from that running record. So based on the strategy, or based on your research, we can use the mini versions, like we did earlier, and you could say things like, remember when we learned that we looked at all the parts of the word? Let's try that work together. Because I know from his running record, this kid's not doing it. Or do a slow check. Whatever wants to go in that blank. Okay? So to wrap us up, there's a couple things I want to show you or share with you. You can use, you're like, where do I get my teaching points? I hear that a lot. How do I know what to coach about? Running records is like golden for A through K readers. It gives you so much information about what they're doing or not doing to word solve. And that's where they need, yes, you need to do comprehension. You need to do the meaning and syntax work. But if they can't even decode the words, there's no way they're understanding what they're reading. So that's why I said most of your goals are going to be probably word solving, because that's where most of your A through K readers are. Not saying you can't do comprehension. Didn't say that. Okay. Then you have your prompts for skills, strategies, and habits. And that's the one that has like level A and then has a bunch. And I've linked them in here. Level A, and then it says like this one. Uses and locates known words. And then it has prompts underneath it. This is great for, I know they're a level, like Cosimo's a level D, okay? And I might even look at the level E1 and try to figure out, okay, there's something on here about using graphophonemic information. If he's not using visual, I've got even more prompts to prompt this kid with that's specific to his level. So use this, okay? And then you've got that text bank characteristic document that's like, typically a level A does these kinds of things. Typically a level D does these kinds of things. Use those to your benefit, because if they're not doing those things, you have a teaching point. You now have something to coach them about, okay? And use your anchor charts. Yes, we love anchor charts, but they have to become more useful and in our kids' hands so that they actually can anchor to them and not just be a chart on the wall again. Here's your link to that Running Records webinar, okay? And then the last thing I want to tell you, I mentioned earlier about note-taking and or record keeping and about the toolkit idea of making a demo text. Charlene and Carol Fry did a session. They're doing it actually right now. So it's definitely when you want to go back, now that you kind of know how to do the conferring, like how to get my teaching point to do the conferring work. Their toolkit webinar live stream is about how to build the resources so that when I sit down next to that kid, I'm ready to pull the demo text. because I know that's what I need. So it's hard to build your toolkit for a unit if you don't know what you need for that unit, okay? So that's definitely one you might want to go watch. But 2, for record keeping, there's a really small, it's just a slideshow kind of self-paced that I put together, mini workshop of how to keep records. And it's not really necessarily as much on the how as it is the why I should keep records, but there is some of the how. It is like what to think about when I'm keeping records. What am I trying to accomplish as a teacher with my record keeping? Am I doing it because I just have to keep records? Am I doing it because it's going to help me teach this kid along the way? Okay, and then it gives you some sample ideas of how to do that work. And I'll make sure that link, if for some reason it's not shared, I'll make sure it gets shared after this. And they're just slides. In the notes, I've kind of written my thoughts about what's on the slide, but there's no like webinar type thing or anything like that. It's just to give you another resource to think about record keeping in the midst of conferring, which kind of go hand in hand. So we'll end there. I think it's pretty much time. So we'll wrap up. If you have questions, we'll have the chat on for like probably another 10 seconds. But you can email me for sure. If there's something that's not like working, request access and it'll send me an email. That way I know I need to fix something. I think I got everything, but you know. And then you have like 10-minute break or so-ish, and we'll go to the next session wherever you're going. I hope this was helpful. Thank you for tuning in. I know this is a little strange on both ends, but I appreciate you guys and all the work you're doing. And see you next time. Okay, bye.